Do you have a SQL Server like this that you want to connect to Power BI? Well, it's pretty easy. Let's jump in. Welcome back to our series on Power BI Basics, where we're teaching you how to use Power BI one step at a time. Today we're going to be loading data from a local SQL Server into Power BI Desktop. So let's go ahead and let's get started. First, let's open up Power BI Desktop. Once Power BI Desktop opens up, what we're going to do is we're going to create a blank report. Then we're going to load data by going Get Data and then SQL Server. Once SQL Server opens up, you're going to need a little bit of information. You're going to need the server name, and then you're going to need to set it to import or direct query in terms of data connectivity mode. If you set it to import, what the Power BI report will do is it will load the data into a local data model. If you set it to direct query, it will read the data as it sits in the database. So if you have real-time or streaming data into the database, the report will always be up to date. If you expand the advanced options, you can also set a timeout mode. So if you have a long-running query, it'll kill the query after the set amount of time, as well as a SQL statement, where if you provided a database up above, you can actually select the database. Over here in SQL Server, I have a sales data table. If you see, I'm connected over localhost / SQL Express, and then the table is in a database called Power BI Demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter those settings into this report. So I'm going to go localhost / SQL Express, and then I'm going to go ahead and provide the database of Power BI Demo. And for now, I'm not going to enter in a SQL statement. I'm going to hit OK. What it's going to do is it's then going to try to connect. Right now, since this is a local SQL database on my computer, I'm going to select Use My Current Credentials, and I'm going to hit Connect. It'll then often pop up that we can't connect to the data source using an encrypted connection. That's okay. For now, we're going to hit OK. And it'll go ahead and it should pop up a list of all of the tables in that database. If we then select one of these tables, we can then bring that data into Power Query. So we can, by hitting Transform Data, or we can load that data directly into our data model by clicking Load. I'm going to click Transform Data right now so I can go into Power Query. As you can see, I now have the source set to my SQL database, and then I have my data flowing on in from that database. Even though this database contains approximately 100,000 rows of data, it's profiling the columns based on the top 1,000 rows. And by profiling, that means it's determining the data type of the columns up above. It could be worth you expanding this so it profiles based on the entire data set if you run into errors when you hit Close and Apply. The reason why that you might run into an error is because the first 1,000 rows of data might be a number, and then there might be a letter in the next 1,000. The other way you can do this, or the other way you can bring data in from a SQL Server, is by connecting to the same SQL Server. So right now I'm going to type localhost SQL Express, and then I'm going to connect to my Power BI Demo. And then I can go into advanced options and I can define a SQL query. So in this case, I'm going to define the SQL query as select star from that table. If I now click OK, you'll see that it will run the query and then bring it into Power Query exactly the same way it would if I ran the table. The advantage is that I can apply where criteria in this query. So when I'm importing the data, it doesn't always try to bring in the entire table. So for example, if I go back in here and my SQL query, I'm saying A, and then I'm saying where, didn't mean to enter that, so sorry. When I'm going where A.product ID equals 25, it will now only bring in sales on product 25 into the data model. I could do that same thing in Power Query by applying a filter to this column, but it's different because Power Query is first going to load all of the data into the data model and then apply the filter, where in here it's applying the filter at the server. In order to finalize loading this data, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to hit close and apply. There's a lot more things we can do with a SQL Server and Power Query, but for now, this has just been a quick demo on how to load data from your SQL Server into Microsoft Power BI. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you've learned something. Please feel free to like this video and subscribe, as we're continuing to release a Power BI tutorial every single day. And there